Welcome to the September 24th City Council work session. I'd like to now turn it over to City Manager Benda to walk us through the agenda overview.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Robust work session that we have this afternoon. They are usually full of good information, good research and/or recommendations. But today I'll use the word, and I don't use it lightly. There's legacy-like opportunities before you and your peers today that you're going to engage upon. Not the least of which, during the work session, you're going to talk about White Rock School project, and I'll go into that a little bit more detail of an event or an opportunity in a part of our city and for a building to look at refurbishing into a neighborhood center. Then we also are celebrating this coming Saturday, if you've trained and are ready, the running of the Virginia 10 miler. We're celebrating 50 years. Obviously, there was a couple years because of the pandemic and other that it wasn't run, but we're here to talk through and celebrate that as well. And then also under the work session, we have here Tom Martin, who is prepared to talk to you about the property toolkit, some of the code enforcement, code compliance things that we've done as a result of direction of City Council and the importance it takes to make sure that our neighborhoods are thriving and what have you. And sometimes some of that is feedback to our neighbors about their homes and about their properties. And business item briefings, as a reminder, are those opportunities for council to be engaged ahead of a vote that will be pending about a particular item. And under there, again, those legacy-like things, you'll hear from Gregory about both trash and also baseball, which are just the broad topics. And then we have Stephanie Suter here who's going to engage you about towing. And then another kind of follow-up on is the lifelong learning committee that we had talked about last meeting. We brought it back under the briefings. Today, we were supposed to have had a joint meeting with Lynchburg City Schools, and because of scheduling, we've pushed it to the fourth Tuesday in October 22nd. So this is just an opportunity. I do have Dr. Jennings here that if there are subsequent questions or more questions after having been briefed previously, she can take up those. Madam Mayor, before I turn it back to you, I have a couple housekeeping and then an announcement, if that's okay with you.
Go ahead.
Housekeeping, I sent you a note. We've done this in years in which that there's a council meeting that falls during the week of the Thanksgiving holiday or holiday week. We currently have scheduled November 26th as a meeting that Tuesday. I've asked for a special meeting the prior week, November the 19th, to hold your legislative dinner. You hold that annually. It's being held at the University of Lynchburg. We have secured the same room at 6 p.m. And so if I could have consensus from you and your peers that we could cancel November 26th in lieu of doing the legislative dinner, that would be super helpful as far as that. It's just kind of looking around for head nods.
Council
Yep.
Excellent.
All right, so we'll move ahead with that, make sure that we get notification and everything out. And then, Madam Mayor, some really wonderful and good news that happened overnight. I've since sent something to you and your peers that happened for our fire department. That news should be shared by the fire chief himself. And so I have Greg Wormser here. So, Greg, if he would pop up and engage you and your peers.
Great,
and I'll be right
you.
back.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council. I'm incredibly excited and proud to be up here tonight to tell you about a federal grant that we were recently awarded called a SAFER grant from the FEMA for the federal government to the tune of $4.4 million. And why this is so impactful to us is, first of all, we couldn't be more excited about the support that you all gave us in order to seek this opportunity. This money means that for the next 3 years, we'll be able to hire firefighters at no cost. There is no match from the city side to fund the salaries and benefits. There are costs obviously associated otherwise to uniforms and that sort of thing. But we've saved the city some $4.4 million and positioned us, we think, pretty well for all of us to work together to figure out how we can fund those positions in the future as we build Station 9 located near Liberty University at Oddfellows Road and the 460 interchange. So we're incredibly proud of the work that our team has accomplished as a result of this grant. It's not easy to come by. Just as a marker for you, last year there were $360 million available for more than $5 billion worth of requests. We have not seen what that looks like for this year for our application process, but we're proud of the fact that we were able to secure this grant, really the largest grant that the department has ever received. And so if you certainly have any questions, we'll be talking with you in the future about what this looks like. We'll go through the formal process through Finance Committee and the acceptance of the grant, and intend to begin hiring firefighters as soon as later this calendar year, as the grant period starts in March of 2025 and ends in March of 2028. Any questions from the group?
Is there another one?
What-
Is there another one? Is there another one?
You we'll apply again. We're always going to apply.
Anyone? Dr. Walter?
Yes, I want to commend you on the grant. It's excellent. You said it starts, what's the period for the grant again?
Yeah, it starts in March. So we haven't accepted the grant yet. We're pending that to go through the proper approval process through this body. But once we accept that grant, the funds will be available beginning of March of 2025, and the funds last for 3 years. So it's to fund as many as 21 firefighters over the course of 3 years, their salaries and benefits. So it ends in March of 2028.
Oh, excellent. And in the time period, is there a certain period where you have to utilize all the funds? You said by the 25 period, but is there a certain where you have to start using the funds, or is it kind of flexible?
It is a little flexible, and we've got a great partnership with FEMA. So it is flexible in the fact that we can start it a little earlier with their permission. We can end it a little earlier, but the window of time and totality is the same. But the only thing that's not flexible is we have to hire firefighters within 180 days of receiving the grant. And so that's why we're sort of going to work this process out. Again, we were just notified yesterday at about 4:30 in the afternoon. So we were just super excited to share the news with you all.
Excellent. Congratulations. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, this is just such a gift for our city in so many ways, the station itself, and then of course the funding, and it's going to just add an extra layer of safety for the city. And obviously we're just thrilled to be able to have the support for the additional firefighters, and, and your leadership is so appreciated, Chief. So thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you all for your support. We couldn't have done it without you all and the city manager and his staff. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Love to start the meeting with great news. City Manager Benda, do you have anything else?
No, ma'am. Turn it back to you, which I think you'll then turn it back to me.
Yes. Okay. Well, we'll go on to the White Rock School project update. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. I mentioned this in my overview, the opportunity that we have with White Rock Elementary School and the project there. You'll recall this last fall, we met during our retreat. We talked about using one-time monies to do impactful things. And I think you as a group unanimously supported this effort. And we've since been out there on site. And so much of that hard work and much of the opportunity is coming to fruition this coming week on Friday and Saturday when we have some partners in town. Because I want to make sure that I get this right. I want to make sure that the words that I read and the dates that I use are perfect. So if you'll forgive me, I'm going to read the next bit. So built in 1912, the former White Rock Elementary School is located at 400 Buena Vista Street and recently vacated by the Lynchburg Community Action Group. Most of what now is White Rock Hill was annexed by the city in 1908, and the school was built to accommodate the new students in that neighborhood. The White Rock School was substantially enlarged in 1928 to become the two-story structure you see today. It was used as a public school until at least 1960, when the building was repurposed by LINCAG as a Head Start location in 1965 or 66. And I must say, I'll point out here, thank you, Ted, at our museum for the information and also the pictures associated with this. Funding appropriated in FY 2024 by City Council allows for community input, design, and improvements to convert this facility into a neighborhood center. The city has contracted with the firm WPA to engage our community in reimagining White Rock Elementary School as a community hub. The project includes the entire block containing the school buildings bounded by Buena Vista, Poplar, Harvey, and Tulip Streets. I wanted to take this as a picture that Ted found and kind of indexed by location, certain things of import. And you can see kind of the central location that White Rock had in the area, and then the proximity that White Rock Baptist Church has. And you can see Main Street. So I just thought it was a really, really cool picture that they had found of the area. And then as to particulars, We've been working together with WPA and they've begun gathering their data. They've been on site. They've got some imaging that they'll show. They're visiting the site this coming week and conducting initial historic preservational assessments. You can see there that on September 27th, there's going to be a door-to-door engagement that they have in the community. You and your peers, mayor, vice mayor, members of city council, have an opportunity that afternoon to meet 2 by 2 if you'd like with WPA to talk about some of the things that they're envisioning or that they have found and some of the opportunities that could be for the school. Then on the 28th, you can see there that from 11 until 2 p.m., we'll be at White Rock Baptist Church, located at 401 Florida Avenue. And there will be the first community meeting, which will introduce the project to the community, identify community champions, build rapport, and elicit input regarding community values and vision. Options presented will be both realistic and feasible, leaving them open to the imagination of the future uses and tenants. And again, I should also point out that lunch will be provided for those that are in attendance. 2 subsequent opportunities will be a community pitch day on November 16th, location to be determined at this point, and then a community hub workshop. And finally, at the December 7th, WPA will deliver a final presentation that reflects community input with options for phasing the project, maintaining code compliance and eligibility for historic tax credits. This is just one of those great opportunities for our city, for an area, for a building that in having the tenant vacate, it is a city-owned building in an area that I know that each one of you have found of import or interest in, that I'm really excited about the impending efforts that we're going to have together. So with that, Mayor, if there's any questions for me or for city staff, I'm willing to accept those now.
Dr. Wilder?
Yes, thank you for the information.
Yes, sir.
We're looking forward to the presentation on Friday as well as the community meeting on Saturday.
Yes, sir.
And several members have contacted me already. As you
Good.
know. And one of them, some of them suggested to make sure that they invite the community input, but they want to make sure a person from the White Rock area have their say, so have their portion. So I don't know whether you identified on the sign-in sheet or however you might do that.
Okay.
Make sure you know which one are residents of the area,
Yes,
just
sir.
to make sure that their input is listened to, and they made certain companies like they want people coming in and telling them what to do, kind of thing.
That's
so just
great
make
feedback.
sure
Thank
their
you.
input is valued and taken to heart.
Absolutely, and we've heard some from the community. I've walked it with you, Dr. Wilder, and also with you, Mr. Taylor, and actually the mayor and I were out there the other week. Many of you have actually been with me over there to look at the building. But any kind of feedback like that, absolutely. Work Program Architects is a firm out of Norfolk that I've worked with in the past that does this kind of particular community engagement, has done it very well. But we can always be better. So something like that, we'll make sure that we know just exactly who lives in the neighborhood and make sure that their input is heard.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'll just say that I echo the sentiments of Dr. Wilder, and Councilman Taylor, I know, has been working on this as well for a while. And the community members that have reached out to me and I've spoken to are just so excited. And, this is a community that has not had a community center at all. And so they're so excited to finally have one. And it'll, from what I understand, be the largest community center in the city once this happens, which is really meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And I would like to just read you a message I received from Miss Deborah Marshall. I'm going to put you out here on blast, Miss Deborah Marshall, but in a good way, because she is a family from White Rock, 69 years on White Rock Hill. And she said, the White Rock Elementary School, which became the Head Start, was the segregated elementary school for the white kids. She said, I was in the first kindergarten class at the Hutcherson Elementary School in 1960, which was the black elementary school. And then she and I had an exchange, and she said that her daughter's now a teacher and that the kids in the neighborhood, black and white, would play together. And she watched a meeting that we had last night at the coalition meeting, and we were talking about the school, and she said she was just so excited about what was coming and what were the plans, that we were having for the conversation. And she really wanted to see the people from White Rock have some input, and she was just thrilled to know that the city was going to do something with that building that was going to really be meaningful for the community. So it's just wonderful to have those messages from the community members who really have looked for something like this for a long time.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, very encouraging.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else?
I'd just like to thank the city for giving people in White Rock a sense of ownership.
Yes, sir.
And when you give people a sense of ownership, they blossom. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so now we're going to have Miss Margit Upshur. Just walk up here. Don't run. Just walk. Okay.
Gotta save myself for Saturday.
Yes, take your time. Talk to us about the 50th running of the Virginia 10 miler.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of council. I'm excited to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Moore & Giles Virginia 10 miler. This is one of my favorite days of the year. We're all on our best behavior. The city looks amazing. This milestone reflects decades of community partnership between the city, the business community, and the Lynchburg Roadrunners. Since the first race, hopefully I'll get this. There we go. What you're seeing up on the screen there is the very first race in 1974. And then the second photograph is, I believe, of the start line in 2022. This race has got a storied history, and I'm just going to give you a few facts about it because we're all ambassadors for this incredible race, and I want to thank some people back behind me. Since the first race in 1974, this event has become a beloved tradition. It draws runners this year from 39 states and 7 countries, but it has done that over all of the years. It's absolutely amazing, and I want to recognize right behind me is Sackett Wood, who is the president of Moore & Giles that stepped up to sponsor this race in 2021, and thank him so very much. He's also a member of our EDA, so go team. What began as the 10 miler has grown into an entire weekend, including the Virginia 4 miler, the 4 mile walk, and the Amazing Mile Children's Run and Family Festival. So that'll all go on Friday afternoon right at Amazement Square. And it welcomes participants of all ages and abilities. The 10 miler has hosted over 40 Olympians, including legends like Bill Rogers, Frank Shorter, Alexi Pappas, Jared Ward, and who I got my picture taken with, Joan Benoit Samuelson. This year, we expect a record number of participants for the 50th running of this race, over 4,200 runners. That's a 74% increase from last year. We're thrilled to welcome Olympic gold medalists. If you were watching the Olympics, one of the surprise folks that came out of nowhere was the Olympic gold medalist Cole Hocker, who is from the Blacksburg area. I think he had an Olympic, record time, but he just blew in while the other people were looking at each other going, "You're not going to beat me." It's amazing, but there'll be a free talk at EC Glass from 6 to 7 on Thursday. That's the kind of things that this race brings. For the folks you're talking about in White Rock and all over, there's so many things that people in this community and the business community, along with the city, bring when this race comes to town. The event has thousands of dollars of economic impact on our community, and the newly renovated Bella Vista Hotel and Suites is the host hotel. The Lynchburg Museum is also marking this occasion with a special exhibit. It opened to a record crowd on August 2nd and will run through October 29th. And I will tell you that it is an unbelievable exhibit, and it was put on by a lot of the people sitting behind me from the Roadrunners, but the community has really, really, come out in droves to see something that they've all been a part of. They have the actual T-shirts line the walls in the back every single year. They've got 50 T-shirts up there that people have brought in to share with everybody on this 50th run-in. We're also excited to celebrate the release of a limited edition book, The Virginia 10 Miler, 50 years and still running strong. It's by Brett Bowman and Leslie McFadder, who are here in the audience. Please join me in recognizing their incredible work, and they brought a copy, signed copy, by the way, for each member of council. This year we also have been awarded the Roadrunners Club of America National Championship. So the running of the 10 miler has been designated by the Roadrunners Club of America. I don't know if you knew this or not, but we're a runner-friendly community. And that was an application that Jeff Fedorko behind me and a bunch of other dedicated employees, about 140 pages long, when we applied for that back in the day. We are proud to have over 30 corporate sponsors. That's what I want you to see, is that that's what makes a community, is when our corporate sponsors, when our residents all come together to celebrate this incredible event. We have 23 corporate teams, and 9 nonprofits are going to benefit from the application fees for this race. I want to especially acknowledge Jeff Fedorko, who's been the race director since 2007 and the owner of the city's premier running store, Riverside Runners, along with, I believe, Danny Boyers is the course director, and Evan Davis is the VP of the board. Some of the board members are sitting back behind me now. Well, can we all please give them a round of applause? I invite council and the citizens of Lynchburg to join us in celebrating the remarkable 50th anniversary of the Moore & Giles, Virginia 10 miler. Please come out and line the streets to cheer on the runners. Your energy makes this race truly special. I always tell people when I'm coming across the finish line, if I'm lucky enough to do that, and I have been so far, I tell everybody to clap for every person that comes through, and they do a great job from the podium of calling out everybody's name to the very last runner, because we have an unbelievable number of people who've been running the race for many, many years. But I will tell you, as somebody who's run races in other cities, the crowd makes the race. If Lynchburg loves you, you're going to come back. So this event is not just a race, but it is a lasting source of pride, community spirit, economic impact, or I wouldn't be up here, and the recognition for our city now and years to come. So I am so pleased that I was given the opportunity to come up and talk to you about this, and I will be back at the October 8th work session to share additional information on the Office of Economic Development and Tourism's sports tourism accomplishments. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. I thought you were going to jump right up there, Brett.
Yeah. I was going to give it to the clerk. Oh, I see with the names. I got you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. How kind. Really do appreciate that. And Lynchburg does love you. And I just appreciate you running for me on Saturday. Okay. Up next, we have Mr. Tom Martin, Code Compliance and Property Toolkit Update. Hello.
Hello. I always love coming after Margette, especially talking about something fun like the Property Toolkit. But Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon and update you on the city's Property Toolkit. This is something we've been trying to do quarterly for you. So the Property Toolkit is a term that staff is using to describe the programs that we are using to really improve public safety, the quality of life, and economic development to foster strong neighborhoods. 9 of these programs that you see on the screen are handled by the Department of Community Development with a very dedicated staff led by Mr. Keith Wright, who is the division head for code compliance. Also included in that is the tax delinquent sale that's handled through the Department of Finance, I believe the next tax delinquent sale is occurring on October the 22nd and includes right around 33 properties. And those are properties that have been delinquent for 2 to 3 years, depending on the value. So just a little bit about these programs. Property maintenance ensures compliance, minimum compliance with the city's property maintenance and building code. Rental inspections is in a certain, and we'll talk about that one a little bit more, requires inspections of rental units that are non-owner occupied within certain areas of the city. The vacant housing is a very important piece of this program. There's about 482 properties in that program today. And these are properties that have been vacant for 12 months and are not lawfully connected to electric or water. And why that's important is that we're able to identify these properties early on and start getting the attention of the owners to try and prevent them from becoming derelict or condemned, because they have not got to that point yet. So if we identify them early on while they're vacant, we can hopefully prevent them from further deteriorating. So that's a very important program. Then we have the derelict housing. That is a program where the structure is condemned, it's been vacant, and it's not connected to utilities. We obviously have city-funded demolitions, and then what we refer to as our nuisance programs, which are weeds, trash, clutter, and abandoned vehicles. So just to look at the nuisance complaints, the weeds, trash, abandoned vehicles, and clutter, typically what happens is when the complaint comes in for weed, trash, clutter, or inoperative vehicle, within 24 to 48 hours, staff goes out to the property and does an inspection. If there is a violation, the property is posted and the owner is notified of the violation. And within 10 days, the property is re-inspected. So they have 10 days to correct that problem. Upon re-inspection, if it has not been taken care of, right around 2 weeks, the city sends out contractors to cut the weeds, clean the property up, or tow the vehicles. So 14 days and the property is clean. On a monthly basis, we submit the batch to our buildings and collections staff, and they bill the property owner. And we repeat. Most often that is on weed complaints. Typically in a growing season, we'll visit a property about 2 to 3 times and cut a property 2 to 3 times a year. For the numbers on that, you can see here some examples of clutter. And what is clutter? Basically, that is trash that is smelling, that is harboring rodents or snakes, is blighting the property or leading to some other health, public safety issue. And then inoperative vehicles are those that are inoperable. They do not have valid license or a valid inspection sticker and can be seen from the street. So in a fiscal year, the last fiscal year, we did 684 nuisance cases out of community development. Of those, 156 of those were abated by the city, meaning we had to go out and send our contractor out. We actually have very good private abatement or people taking care of their properties upon the notice of violation. 511 of those were abated by the property owner. And when this presentation was put together, 17 of those were still in progress. So total of 684, that's 684 cases that staff are dealing with. And just because it's 684, if we have to go out there 2 or 3 times a year, you can see how that actually multiplies. So our rental inspection program, this is really a very important program that started in 1993. It's really intended to protect our citizens from substandard rental housing. It's based in, we have rental inspection districts, which is essentially the older parts of the city. There's approximately 4,000 units, and right now we're getting to about 340 of those on an annual basis. So it's on a rotating basis. We have one staff person that's somewhat dedicated to that program, but they are going out to make sure that people are not living in substandard rental units. And these are non-owner occupied units. So very important program. You've seen this map before, the concentration of condemned buildings. We've thrown numbers at you. When this map was first put together about 2 years ago, there's about 320 units. We're approximately down to about 250 units now, so we're making very good progress with this. Again, the concentration of those units are in the older parts of the city. But the thing to remember about this map is the numbers are going to go up and down as new units come in. So again, that vacant registry is usually a precursor to condemned. Okay, but we're doing everything we can do to keep properties from becoming condemned. So program figures, you've seen this chart before, and as we would expect, the numbers have increased over time. So when this chart was put together, we had city-funded demo. We had done 9 since January. We just finished up 3 last week, so the next time you see this chart, it will be 12. Private-funded demos, 14. A combination of city private funds being used were 2. And what we're really proud of is these renovations. There's been 8 done since January, and we have 13 in progress. And that's what we're really working hard to do. You'll see it in another slide, but our goal is rehabilitation for these properties. We don't want to have to tear them down. We don't want them to get to that point where they have to be condemned, but our goal is rehabilitating the properties, making sure that they are contributing to the tax base, making sure that they're livable and not causing blight and deterioration of the neighborhood. Our derelict program, which we spoke of earlier, that's where if the property is condemned and it goes in this program, the owner starts getting billed $500 monthly. That typically gets people's attention if they do not submit a rehabilitation plan. If they come in and submit that rehabilitation plan within 90 days and give staff a reasonable schedule for fixing the property, they will not be billed. But unfortunately, we have 41 properties in this program, and we anticipate it to continue to grow. Now, if I come back to you in October or December, ever when I'm directed to come to you, you would expect for these numbers to grow. I'm telling you this evening that they will not, because we're essentially out of funding to do the things that are required to do this. We'll see it later on, but we get $100,000 a year for demo. What's important about that is when citizens of these condemned derelict properties know that the city is serious about coming in and condemning them, they'll either sell it or demolishing them. They'll either sell it to someone who's going to do something with it, or they'll tear it down themselves. If we do not have that funding as leverage, these numbers are not going to increase. You're not going to see the properties change hand. So you will not see demolitions. You will not see renovations, and it's all due to funding. So that's a very important note. This is when we first came to you in January, we talked about working on this dashboard to see where we are a little bit more easily. And what this chart does is shows where we are per neighborhood. And you can see that we have focused efforts in Diamond Hill, White Rock Hill, and College Hill. As the city manager used to say, presidential streets that aren't so presidential. So we have focused areas there, and we have, I can use that, right? That's a pretty good thing. But we have focused efforts there, and we've been making very good progress in those neighborhoods. So just some examples. This was a fire case, 420 Holly Street. The building was actually demolished by the owner. Unfortunately, they left the foundation, and the city had to come in and take that out. So that was one of the private city demos that was done. Why is this important? If we left that structure there, it would be blight on that neighborhood, which leads to crime, which leads to other public safety issues. Now we have a vacant lot that is ripe for infill. There's already water and sewer to the property, so that takes development costs down. So that's another benefit of having these houses removed when they're too far gone. 803 Daring Street, this is just another one that was demolished by the city. 1709, again, creating lots that are ripe for infill. But again, our goal is rehabilitation. You can see 1710 Locust and 1620 Taylor. Both of these, which are in the Diamond Hill neighborhood, are being rehabilitated. And the one on the left, 1710 Locust, is still currently undergoing rehab on the inside. That's essentially a new house. They saved the front wall and the foundation. 1620 Taylor is about ready for final inspections and will be put on the market. All of these structures that you're seeing went from essentially no value to pushing north of $200,000 in value now that they've been rehabilitated. So I think that's a very good success for the programs. Some that are ongoing, 1322 Y Street and 1323 Fillmore. So again, you can see the vast improvements. Recent starts, we have one on Jackson Street and then also 814 3rd Street. Those houses are going to be rehabilitated. This is one that I was really interested in when I took over as a director and I started looking at these things. You know, some of the conversations I had with the manager and Mr. White was, well, what happens when you put a green condemned sticker on a building? You go and you put it up and it sits there and nothing happens. This building had been condemned since 2010 for a lot of different issues. And we started working with the owner who sold, and this building is currently under, it's going to be renovated. And they're going to take that fake facade off. They're going to renovate the interior of the structure. I don't believe they've finalized what they're going to do with it yet. But this building, which is very important to our downtown, is being rehabilitated. And that's 812 Main Street next to Bank of the James. So some court cases. Another tool in our toolkit is to actually use the courts, and that's usually with varying successes. The 1606 Main Street was Myers and Rhodes building that was hit by a vehicle and stayed in a bad state for quite a while until we were using the court process and the owner came through and fixed that building. The 501 Church Street, that building was painted due to the court cases. And then the Pulaski Street properties, two of those have been sold to the Housing Authority, and one of them is scheduled to go back to court, which I believe that the owner is in conversations to sell that property also. And I believe the Housing Authority intends to put housing on those after demolishing them. The 1112 Main Street, the City Auditorium, this has a lot of moving parts on it, but it goes back to court in December of 2024. So our property toolkit, again, public safety, economic development, quality of life equals strong neighborhoods. How are we doing these 9 programs? We currently have 5 full-time staff and 3 part-time. We have a funding of $100,000 annually for demolition, $30,000 for weeds, clutter, and trash. Looking at Roanoke, they have 17 full-time staff. Danville, 14 full-time staff, and they are funded at $350,000 annually for demolition. So where does that leave us now? We are about 2-3 months into the fiscal year, and we have 2 properties that are in immediate need of demolition. 808 Florida, which was a fire case. Quite frankly, we're not sure if we have enough funding to demolish this structure. If we went to court, It's not going to do any good. So it's probably just going to sit there. Also, the owner is out of the area, so getting them into court is an issue. So it's more than likely that this building is going to stay there until next fiscal year. And I don't know, I can't sugarcoat it for you. That's just the reality of it. 1106 Jackson Street, this is another one that is in, you can see from the pictures, is in obvious need of being demolished before it falls down. But again, it's something that we are not able to get to. So where would we like to go over time? We would like to see increased funding for demolition and ultimately stabilization of blighted structures if we can. We'd like to see seed housing for Housing Trust Fund and also funding for strategic property acquisition. And this is something that I know council has to prioritize things, but we're doing a lot with the resources that council gives us, and we are definitely appreciative of that. But right now, we are at the limits of what we can do. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. And again, thank you for letting me speak with you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Wilder?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it. This is one of the areas where I get most of the calls about. It's about because a lot of the properties were majority in Ward 2, so I get a lot of calls. Just for everybody, the Housing Trust Fund, could you just give a short summary of what that is again?
So one of the things, again, we haven't worked all of that out, but one of the things we had talked about was one, having pre-approved plans that developers could come in and say, okay, we've got these pre-approved plans that meet zoning for this lot. You can get your building permit right away, right? Also, it might be something like down payment assistance, so on and so forth. The strategic property acquisition is being able to go in if we have willing sellers that we can focus on neighborhoods like Diamond Hill, College Hill, White Rock, whatever it may be, and acquire properties to get them into the hands of developers that want to actually do something with them. Because in the end, that's what it is about, is getting these properties turned over to people that will do something with them, that will either demolish and rebuild or rehabilitate the property.
And I know we don't have it in the budget yet, but if it does that have funding for a person? Like the problem I see sometimes, the persons might want to do renovations, but don't have the funding for that.
Again, the details have not been worked out, but it very well could. Yes, sir.
So I know we didn't have it this past cycle, but so hopefully we can revisit that this current budget cycle. I think it's just so neat to give persons options like that, especially persons who really want to live in the community and just don't have those resources. I know that they did purchase a house over on my thing is gone. It came off in pieces. Anyway, but yeah, came off in pieces. I was talking, but anyway, I'll keep talking though. But that's one of the areas that I think is so crucial. If we can find some funding, it'd be wonderful. And all the toolkits that we have are so helpful. Okay, we'll fix it later. I think they're so helpful for a person in the community. I'm just glad you're making some progress. The house on Washington Street, which was probably like the poster child for derelict property, the neighbors wanted to tear it down. And I was for tearing it down too, but then one of the persons, after we took to court several times, they ended up, I was looking for Kent White, he's not there, I'm looking at an empty chair, talking to Kent White. So they took him to court several times, and then the person ended up purchasing the property. And now the property is amazing. I know it probably cost a fortune to renovate because I thought it was pretty bad off. But again, we just see persons making an investment in our community. So I really appreciate that, the work you're doing, and just any other tools you might need so we can continue this process, especially Ward 2. It is so crucial. So thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Helgeson?
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Years ago, there used to be a lot of the funding was the Spot Blight program through CDBG. So the Community Development Block Grant funds that used to come in, and we would partner with the Housing Authority. I know several years ago, all of a sudden that just kind of evaporated from the CDBG, but that was what you're saying is exactly what they said at every meeting when there was an issue that rose to Spot Blight. They said, look, at our goal is to rehabilitate. And first of all, why is that partnership and that funding source through CDBG no longer been utilized. Is there?
Yeah, I remember exactly what you're talking about. At some point, the Housing Authority made a conscious decision not to use spot blight. I believe they were actually using eminent domain to do that because they had to come and I believe council had to vote on each one.
Where it got to that point?
When it got to that point, yes, sir.
What they had is the tools, because we had the funding through CDBG, and then they had the leverage to actually do what you're talking about, where, look at, hey, if you don't do something, it's going to be condemned through eminent domain. And then even if you then begin to start improving the property, that it's put on hold because their goal is to renovate.
Sure, and that might be why it went away from CDBG funding. Obviously, I can speak with Melville Walker about, do you know, Dr. Walker?
On the CDBG committee, one problem they had with, when Lynn K had that grant for CDBG, they couldn't find contractors to do the project. So Lynn K ended up not applying for that portion anymore because it was difficult finding contractors to do the work.
So that wasn't
one
LINCAG, that was the Housing Authority that was doing it as opposed to the private. So anyway, maybe we can revisit
Sure.
that.
What Dr. Waters is saying is true, though. What we ended up doing this year is, well, actually last year, is we put the demolitions out to RFP to instead of having to, each time we were going to demolish a structure, get 3 bids, we put it out for an RFP and got, Ms. Suter helped us, which she's also always very helpful, and got one contractor on board so that when it gets to that point, we can go to them and have the property demolished. The important thing to remember about all of these structures is each one has a story to tell and each one is at various stages, and there's a lot of background work that goes into notifying heirs, finding heirs, doing all that research before you can even get to the point. So, yeah, it's a process, but definitely something that we need to continue to focus on.
So with that, with these terrible structures, maybe instead of an RFP, we should use 3 different letters, TNT. And so anyway, so now switching to another.
That is what I did in Marine Corps. But
Yeah, exactly. That's why I thought you'd be right for the.
I might get in trouble, but anyway.
One other item on the rental inspection program, and I sent an email the other day. The rental inspection program, I know you said did it start in 1993 or is that just the code of 1993? Because I know we did something.
That's when the code was put in place,
Yeah, so
and
it
it has evolved over time. Yes,
More
sir.
like in 2000-ish, sometime where we actually adopted something. But the rental inspection program was, like you said here, by reducing substandard living conditions. There were lots of slides that were showed about houses that were just, deplorable and all that kind of stuff. I just heard from somebody where I forwarded or sent an email to regarding the complaint, where a person that had a house that they're renting, and then part of that rental inspection got a little more into the aesthetics, or kind of got a little more into maybe keeping flies out from the front door by requiring them to put in screen doors, which with that, I remember when we first talked about this years ago, it was, you're looking at really substandard conditions, and that's what you even have titled here, by reducing substandard living conditions. There's lots of old mansions that don't have screen doors because, that wasn't the style back then. So hopefully that was just maybe an oversight or.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. If we had the specific address, I could look to it further for you. Yet what I would anticipate happened is if there is a screen door on the property, it has to be functioning. So one of the things they could do is they could just take it off. But if it's on the property and it's got a ripped screen, it's got to be fixed.
Okay.
Now, windows do require screens. So they have to have windows in the screens, and that's a minimum of the property maintenance code. So again, it'd be helpful to have the address, and if you could get that to me, I'd be happy to look into it and follow up.
And I spoke with the person again. They said they're getting me. They said, boy, they got a stack, so they're going to bring it to me. It's such a big stack. So
Sure.
Who knows what it is, but I'll let you know.
Again, the rental inspection and the property maintenance code really just ensures minimum standards of the property maintenance code. So, I mean, they're making sure the roof's not leaking, that there's not holes in the floor, that the electrical is working, so on and so forth.
Totally.
But it's definitely not just aesthetics.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir.
And so the screen door was kind of a little surprising.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look into that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Questions?
How you doing, Tom?
Sir,
I said, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir, and you?
Good, good, thanks. So you guys have been busy, and I think it's the combination of you guys and the private sector. I was actually pulled all the parcel data today out of the parcel viewer, and it looks like since last year, we have reduced the number of vacant, or the value of vacant residential properties by about $8 million, with a huge increase on not vacant. So what that's telling me is we're getting rid of vacant properties, vacant residential properties in the city. Part of it is because of what you guys are doing. Part of it's because of what the private sector is doing. So I want to commend you on that effort, because when we eliminate those vacant properties and turn them into something that's better for our tax base and something that actually meets needs for people to have shelter and a place to live, that's a good thing.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
So I appreciate that. One question, just to clarify, I know something that Councilmember Wilder mentioned earlier about the funding for, providing resources for, I guess, fixing some of these properties up. Is that part of that housing trust fund? What's the conversation? I just want to be clear and specific about what that is that he was
Again,
asking about.
Again, none of that has been finalized. It could be. This can get really complicated really quick, because you start getting into the discussions about generational wealth, like some of the concerns you had previously about Pulaski Street. And, people inherit the property and then they can't maintain them and force them, but, and they're forced to either sell or, then if the city demolishes them, they're faced with a lien on the property. And we really don't want to get to that point unless we absolutely have to. So I think what Councilman Wilder is alluding to, if there was some type of funding source that might be able to help people maintain their structures, that might be a good thing. Ultimately, that's council's decision, but that could be an element of it. I think, again, what we would like to see is infill housing, creating a method to encourage that. So those are the types of things. But again, any final details of that housing trust fund have not been finalized.
So I don't know if that's on. Would that be local funding that would fund that? Is that how we would have to do that?
Well, it very well, yes. That's
City manager shaking his head. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the last 2 years, I guess since I arrived, it was a component that I, in my tenure in working in local government, has worked well. And you've had Ken is traveling this week for business, but you'll remember that we had I think it's called the Housing Collaborative, that came to you, Sarah Corintoto, and a number of other people. One of the recommendations was a housing trust fund. And usually what that means is that the locality itself seeds something, and you can pick a number. And then the elements or aspects of it, you need money for acquisition, you need money for demolition, and then you need money to do another variable, which you're kind of feeling your way through as far as what you want to accomplish. Because usually what you do is you try to see where you can get the most return on your investment. And you pick an area, I think, through the Strong Neighborhoods Coalition. I know Diamond Hill has been approached. What are some of the other ones, Tom?
White Rock.
Yeah. And so usually what happens is it's hopefully it's not a 1-to-1, but it's a 1-to-3. So usually a locality puts in public money of X, and hopefully it's then positioned as a complement or a variable for a private group, private entity, private trust that comes alongside it. And usually from that you can do, for example, I've seen it or experienced in a neighborhood that in the locality that I served previously,
to what Tom was explaining, there was a start to finish product that was expected as far as in the community itself. Said this is what the houses should look like, and this is what the plans look like. And so you as a developer, and usually you can either put together a guild, either through the Redevelopment and Housing Authority or some other entity that says that you are a contractor of X, Y, Z, and you have these different permitting. You can go down to Tom's shop. You can pull the permits to build that particular house. And that's a variable or element that's been grown from that housing trust. So usually it isn't just simply, but it is principally public money that's put in that hopefully leverages private to do some of the things that Tom's talking about today.
So I guess I just want to kind of make sure I'm clear on this, because the piece that Councilman Wilder was asking about, that was specifically about people being able to come and I guess leverage that fund or these resources to be able to fix their own homes. Is
Yes,
that
my experience
is that
was
what that
something-
is?
So the financing, I think that Dr. Wilder was talking about was a way in which to maybe help leverage resources through that trust to do it. My experience of a housing trust fund, those variables become very complicated as it deals with ownership and with financing and who manages those things. I think while it could be a variable, what we would want to do if council wants to move in this direction of a housing trust fund, we would bring you back something that hopefully is one simple and one that we can implement, one that will have a dramatic return on its investment. And three, again, maybe takes into account some of those variables, but gives you pros, cons of what those elements are. Because just as it relates to that particular one, I've seen or heard about that and what becomes, it's a administrative, I'll use the word nightmare, to manage those things as you move into a house that's maybe conveyed once, 2, 3 times, whether or not that lien or that thing, and this is my old hat that I don't wear anymore, thank you, Matthew, whether or not something is followed through and that person that now owns the property, whether or not they have to pay on the note that they've taken out to do an enhancement to their property. So we would the onus would be on us to bring you back something that merits your attention, that maybe, again, takes into account some of the things I've articulated as far as what it can accomplish in an area that needs it.
Got it. Yeah, I just want to, it's kind of, it gets a little hairy when you talk about taxing people and taking their money and then giving it to somebody else to fix their house. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yep.
That raises a lot of red flags for me.
Right.
Now, if there's federal programs, CDBG funding, things like that, like Councilmember Helgeson mentioned, that we can leverage to be able to provide those opportunities, because that money's gone, or citizens have already paid that out of their paychecks. Anything that we can go get from federal funding to bring back into our city, I'm good with that. But
Yeah, very, very valid points, and I didn't mean to complicate things.
Yeah.
It's whatever council chooses.
I just want to clarify that,
Sure.
We're talking about taking local tax dollars from people to fix.
And I would think that it could be a combination of possible federal dollars and, local dollars to accomplish different goals.
But if there's specific federal programs out there where our citizens have already
Sure.
paid those dollars out to the federal government and they've taken it, we can bring it back instead of sending it somewhere else, I'm all for it.
Just as I'm on the community advisory board from our local banks. And I had kind of mentioned it to them, see if they could help support a program like that. So again, however it's developed, just so those resources are there as we as a community work together to bring that to fruition, whether it's using some corporate dollars like a bank that would be a partner in that project. So again, it's just something for your team to explore and see how we can best serve the citizens of our city.
Sure.
I do have a question just to confirm some of the things we've talked about as far as, these houses really becoming public safety issues for our community members that have come forward with their concerns in the past, between them being havens for drug deals, prostitution, gang related issues, right? All those things, obviously, aside from the fact that they're structurally unsound for anybody in the neighborhood. That could be, kids going in them to play, or we have rodent infestations. I mean, these are really our public safety hazards and risks for several reasons. So having the funding to wherever it comes from, whether, if we can get, obviously, grants or other forms of funding for it, is super important because of that safety risk. But what is the number that we're looking at for those two specific houses that you're referencing that we don't have the money to do right now?
$43,000.
43 total.
Yes, and the important thing to remember is you have the demolition costs, then you have to look at whether or not the asbestos has to be abated before you can demolish it, and then you have landfill fees. So you're typically north of $30,000 per structure, and depending on the size.
But those two specific houses, you already have those numbers for.
We have bids for that, yes, 43.
So I would like to talk to you about maybe some options if those are currently safety hazards for the city and we need to get that done. I would be interested in seeing some options that we could discuss currently due to the condition of both of those homes.
Absolutely, Mayor, and what I'll commit to you and your peers is that since I've arrived, you've increased substantially the investment in and the expectation that we have of people being held compliant for their property. So what was $15,000 is now $100,000, and you can see that we're doing our best to use those resources wisely. And so if anything, it was more I know that the takeaway is that we do a lot with a little, and it's true. We could do even more with a little bit more. And so in that respect, I wanted to, if anything, it's just to kind of make you aware of how efficient we've been with the staffing that we have, and that in the first first 3 months of the fiscal year, we've been able to kind of track and do as much as we have with the resources that we have. And so I will come back to you with some options
No,
on them.
I think it's amazing. Absolutely. And I'm thrilled with the numbers that we've seen, but obviously if we have an issue that's a safety risk to our community, there are obviously areas that we can talk about. If there was a majority of council that agreed that we could talk about those two specific houses. And I think we could at least consider that. So.
And again, the manager's absolutely correct. When he first got here, we were receiving 15,000, and quite frankly, we were afraid to spend it because we thought there might be an emergency that comes up, and even if it did, it wouldn't have been enough to demolish it. But we're very thankful for the support that council has given these programs, and I believe that council is definitely making a difference in neighborhoods because of them.
No, it's
So
wonderful.
thank
I mean, in the meantime, we can always talk to people in the private sector as well to see if anybody wants to help out. Anybody watching? We'll appreciate your help, but thank you so much, Mr. Martin. We appreciate it. Oh, sorry.
So with the demolition, for example, those two houses. So those two houses, the owner isn't there, or?
It can be a variety of different things. It can be the one that was the fire case, that owner is in Richmond.
So did they leave? They still own the property, or does the city own
It's
the
a housing
property?
wholesaler that owns it right now. So
Okay.
they're just companies that basically buy them and try to flip them. They're not really going to do anything with it. Others, they could be tied up in heirs.
So with that, now back to so if somebody's got a house that they own, and it's in bad shape, it's all ready to be torn down, and they're going to shrug their shoulders and say, I'm not going to tear it down. And now the city comes and tears it down. They still own the property. And
They
you
do
just
own the
gave them a
property.
$30,000 gift by tearing down and fixing up
No, the city puts a lien on the property.
so if the city puts a lien on it, and so if they've done others with this 100,000, why don't we then treat this as though almost like an enterprise fund?
Because
Where-
it's very difficult to collect those liens unless it's actually sold.
But always willing, Mr. Havison, if what you're talking about is a land revolving, absolutely. There are different ways that we can look at this that upon sale, and I think what you have to get clear title to it. And usually that takes a good second. And depending on where the property is, they're not usually the most viable. But if what you're suggesting and council's interested, we certainly can look at a way in which that rather than the money's going back into the general fund, go into a land revolving that kind of perpetuate itself. That's something we certainly can consider.
It'd be nice, anytime there's incentives, I think that's a good thing, because if you just tear down houses and then, we don't have any more money to tear down other ones, you're going to be a little more inclined to tear something down, or you're not going to tear somebody's property down and they get the benefit from it, because that's not something good either, even though that was maybe nice that it helped clean it up temporarily. But now you're going to get more of those because more people are going to say, I don't have to worry about tearing down my house that had a fire. I'll wait till the city does it. They'll pay 30 grand and get somebody in and do it. And then I come in, I fix it up, and then I pay them off with the increase, and I didn't have to monkey with it. So I'd be very careful with what we're, so anyway, I think it takes a little more it's a thought as far as the economic incentives of how people actually would work. So anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Where's the insurance company? Specifically on this one on Campbell Avenue.
We're assuming they had insurance on it.
Because if they have insurance on it,
Then the insurance company would,
the insurance company is going to pay to demolish it if that's
if it was a
justified.
fire case, but
Yeah.
a lot of times they don't have insurance.
And just along those lines, Mayor, if it's okay, we're also just having properties that are old enough that they're falling down on themselves. And back to your point about.
Yeah, insurance is going to cover that.
Right, exactly. And so in keeping up with our aged infrastructure, and again, I think what we understand is we're 50 square miles that are largely built out. We have 8 neighborhood programs that some of which have partial funding. And so as we consider, and I know what's important to city council is single family residential that we're building that. So many of these places, back to what Mr. Hegelson was saying, is that it becomes a strategy. And I think what we're trying to do is create a strategy that if you took an area like the presidential streets that are not so presidential, you create a working guild, that you have a built out template of houses and what have you that is seeded by resources that then you can get title to the property.
Great. It's a great
You can
idea.
leverage. Yeah. And that, I think that's
So-
where,
But specifically, the 2 properties, I think it was the 2 properties the mayor asked about, that
Yeah.
the one that's fallen down and the one that caught on fire.
Sure.
Right? When was that fire on Campbell Avenue?
That was a couple months ago. That's a recent fire, I believe.
And we don't know if that's insured or not.
I can find out, but I do know the owner is in Richmond.
And the reason that I ask is because I know that we do our own investigation, right, for cause and origin. But the insurance company then also does their own investigation for cause and origin.
Right.
And if we go in and tear that thing down and they haven't done that yet, and there's an insurance company, you know this, we have royally screwed up.
We've had other cases like that, and we
Yeah.
stay in touch with the insurance companies.
So,
There is insurance.
but I mean, it should, if it needs to be torn down, if that's what it is, and there's an insurance company there that's involved, it should
Yeah,
kind of, I guess, just figuring out a way to incentivize somebody to make that happen is what needs to happen, not necessarily us spending money to do it because the insurance company.
Sure. Great feedback. And I think it's, we do our due diligence and, in our follow-up memos,
Yeah.
we usually take these kind of questions, what have you, and marry together some of the information we find. So that'll be definitely one that we follow up on. Thank you. And I do like your idea of partnered with what Councilman Helgeson said as far as, maybe there is a way to kind of make a revolving way to make it work, benefit everybody. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to business item briefings, towing and vehicle recovery services contract award, Ms. Stephanie Suter. Suter, did I say it wrong?
Suter.
Okay, good.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. I'm here today to provide an update on the Towing Advisory Board and present their recommendation to award the next towing and vehicle recovery services contract for the city. The Towing Advisory Board finalized the request for proposals and authorized staff to post the solicitation on May 14th. 3 offers were received. An evaluation subcommittee consisting of city staff from the police department, fleet services, emergency services, and a citizen representative reviewed proposals and presented their observations to the full board. Of the 3 offerers, 1 was eliminated from further consideration because they do not have the equipment necessary to tow the city's Class 2 and Class 3 vehicles, like refuse trucks, fire apparatus, and other heavy vehicles. The full board then attended site visits for the remaining 2 offers. Performing site visits is not something that has been done as part of the evaluation process by the full board in the past. This provided an opportunity for the board to see the operations and equipment available to execute the contract. It also provided additional time to speak with each business owner to better understand their approach to performing the contract and business philosophy. Each board member was actively engaged and did their due diligence. There was full consensus, and the board authorized staff to recommend award of the contract to Beeline Transport. Beeline was selected for the following reasons. Beeline currently employs 14 towing operators who live within 5 miles of their facility for rapid response time. All staff follow a formal training program and maintain certifications. They have a large equipment fleet with the ability to respond to multiple calls at once, with the capacity to handle the city's heaviest, most complex apparatus. And they also contract with an answering service for quick dispatch to incidents after normal business hours. So what's next? During the October 8th meeting, a resolution will be brought before you, which if adopted, will approve award of the towing and vehicle recovery services contract to Beeline Transport and authorize the city manager to execute that contract. So thank you for your time. I'm sure there might be questions, so I'm happy to take those right now.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions? Councilman Hellison?
So you put on there that they had to have large equipment
Oh,
you're right where you were.
we're going back? Oh,
Nope, right where you were. That slide.
oh, okay.
That the operator had to have heavy equipment to handle the city's heaviest and most complex apparatus,
Yes.
which is a good thing, of course, but it's also a rare thing. I imagine you take care of our stuff's breaking down all the time?
Well, sir, yes.
Okay. Wow.
The refuse trucks
Uh-oh.
are pretty regular.
That shouldn't be happening. Yeah, I thought you maintained them well. So anyway, so with that though, but I would imagine, even though it may not be rare but as a percentage, I imagine that's a much smaller percentage than the car accidents or the fires that happen or all those kind of things. And so, I appreciate the recommendation. I guess just the one thing is, if you throw out somebody who's been able to take care of 90% of the other business from even consideration, because they can't do the other 5 or 10% by those big monstrous trucks, wondering if there would have been a way to kind of segregate that and to say, look, we got some, I know Beeline has done a fantastic job, and I was part of the discussions when we had Glenn Trent before and the differences. But as I read that, it almost is like, it's like you can't get into a smaller operator can't get into a bid because they don't have the big monster tow truck to do the 1 or 2 or 5 different tows. And if you could have maybe even separated somehow, where you have those big, our city trucks or refuse trucks having to get towed.
Yeah, well, and really the primary point of this contract is for city fleet and police initiated tows. So we ran the numbers last year, and I believe of class 1, class 2, class 3, the larger vehicles were almost 70% of the city tows for vehicles.
So I thought part of this contract though was like if there's an accident and a police officer shows up or a fire truck and they need to tow the car out of the intersection, that they just go right to the tow operator.
No, it's actually the citizens. If the citizen is able to make a request, then the citizen chooses who tows their vehicle.
So with the city, most of these, you said 70% are the big ones? Oh, okay. You answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
And thank you, ma'am. This was a hot topic. We had a bunch of independent towing company owner operators here at the last meeting. But they were pretty furious about, I guess, not being able to get a piece of the business, so to speak. I've got a unique perspective because I've been in a situation where I put diesel fuel in a fire engine at the city pumps, and then we had to get it towed. It wouldn't start back up. So I get that and the ability to be able to haul those things. And I also know I remember what it was like in the past when there was like a rotating revolving with the police initiated stuff where we went through different tow companies to come out to those accident scenes. But now that's gone away. So I don't know. I mean, we're at where we're at now. But there was a lot of feedback from these towing companies that felt like they weren't being responded to, that they weren't able to get into this process, the RFP in some way, shape, or form. And I'm just giving you the feedback that I got.
Right.
And, you know, I think if there is a way that we can, you know, create an opportunity for different companies to get involved to be a little competitive there, that's, you know.
Well, and certainly having the capacity to haul the larger stuff eliminates so many, you know, there's only a couple in the area that can do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's situations where, you know, some of the equipment, and I know probably 10 years ago, we didn't even have some of that equipment here locally, and now we do. Because you use that stuff when you're doing vehicle extrication too.
Right.
So when you're having to cut cars up, sometimes you need to get a tow truck to help you stabilize and different things. But what I'm getting at is the smaller stuff. I don't know if there's a way to separate that with the police initiated. I have no idea, or we're at where we're at.
Yeah, we talked about a rotation, and it's never something that works very well. So we haven't wanted to revisit that. You know, you've got, you know, Lincom would have to manage that because they're the ones who are dispatching. And if it changes, you know, weekly, which is generally, if you're going to be on a rotation, they want to rotate enough to where it's not, you know, 1 month here, 1 month there. They want it to actively rotate. If you rotate by call, you know, that would be very difficult because sometimes you've got multiple calls at once. You know, how is that going to work? So I think just logistically, it's always been kind of like the city has a contract. The citizens can choose who they want to tow their vehicle when they're in an accident. And this is really primary for city vehicles and police initiated tows.
Yeah, it's, and just make sure we're letting people know in these accidents that they have a right to choose who they want to tow it before we initiate it as well. I think that's something we need to make sure we're.
Absolutely. And that's something we
pushing
can
out
work
to
with
our
the police
citizens.
department, you know, as well to make sure that they're giving everyone equal opportunity to
And one thing
at least reach out to who they want to select.
And one thing I will say that's different is, you know, it's there. I don't know what they did in Norfolk. I'm not sure. I've been other places, Arlington specifically. They just leave. They don't throw high dry down to cover up the fluids on the road. They don't do anything. The police department just, boom, accident. All right. Everything's pushed off the side of the road. Bye. See ya. And they just leave it. So the fact that we actually are pushing this to get these vehicles cleared off the road and get the fluids cleaned up is really, it's not, they don't do it everywhere.
Right.
So.
And one other thing that, you know, we kind of researched was a lot of larger areas that have, you know, a rotation, they maintain the lot, the impound lot. So everyone's pushing those vehicles, you know, no matter who's picking it up, they're taking it to the city-owned lot. And the city, you know, I'm sure probably doesn't want to get into the business of storage facilities. So that's the other piece of that, in that rotation, so that, you know, we always know where the car is. You know, it's either going to be, you know, at the towing provider's facility or, you know, impound or wherever that is. So.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Vice Mayor Frolby?
This is one of those moments where like local government. And it's a little hard to track just because it can be so dense, but also like why, what's going on, what's different. So can we break this down as simply as we can?
Sure.
For those watching at home, what is the difference between what it currently is and what this would do?
Nothing. This is just a continuation of what we're already doing.
Just bear with me, guys.
Okay.
Just what's the difference?
Nothing.
It's okay if it's nothing.
It's
Because
nothing.
folks at home, like I guarantee it, especially those towing companies, are like, what's going on here? Okay, so when we enact this and I get in an accident and it's not police initiated, what are my options as a citizen to get my car towed?
You can call whoever you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it
And
is,
dispatch, and you just tell PD, and PD will, let Lincom know and they will dispatch.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
If it is police initiated,
Mhm.
what are my options?
Then Beeline was the one to come.
And that's, I can only use Beeline because
Yeah, I mean, it's
police.
for like DUIs and impounds and that type of thing. Beeline is going to be the one who comes to get them.
Is that different than what we are currently doing?
No.
No, it's not.
No.
So help me understand then, as you understand it, or your staff, or everyone on this project, what's the concern then with the, because I want to make sure they know they're heard. What's the concern then with the towing companies with this change, even though what we're being told is not
Right. I think,
substantively different?
yeah, I think if a lot of times, if the citizen or the person involved in the accident doesn't know who to call or is not from the area, then they will dispatch Beeline.
Okay.
So that's where you're getting to that, their PD is, doing that. But that is because they need to clear the street and the person doesn't know who else to call. So it typically will default to Beeline to do that.
I get that. I'm sorry if I'm being dense, but it's
No,
because
okay.
what's the concern of the industry that,
So I think, and
if you guys know it,
I'm
if,
60,000 feet at this. I haven't been out here. I think if I understand what you're tracking towards is that when this went to bid last time, right? Because what we have is an expired contractual agreement to do towing, expired.
Mhm.
So under VPPA, you have procurement law. And
what is VPPA for?
Virginia Procurement,
Virginia Public Procurement Act.
that's right, that's the acronym. That's what Ms. Suter does extremely well, right? And so we're subject to that because you started with the local government piece, right? So that's what we're subject to. So we put together a process where I think Ms. Suter explained very well things that she went over and above to do to ensure, because I think what happens or why there might be this bit of a kerfluffle is that when this went to bid last time, what I understand, there was one respondent.
But there were two.
There were two.
still two.
There were
Mhm.
still two.
Yes.
Again, it's a 5-year agreement that there's a substantive piece of, I think somebody said business that's being contracted for. So I suspect if you're I don't know what the towing community was 5 years ago and how many people, but it sounds like two.
It was two.
It was two then, but I'm saying I don't know how big it was then as far as maybe mom and pop shops that have a truck or two. Now it is expired. There was a competition to gain this business that again, subject to law, was processed, went through, and now what's coming forward is an award. And invariably in an award and choosing a company, there are other companies that were not successful in obtaining that contract.
Sure.
So I suspect if there's a din of noise around this, whether or not it's what you do on site or who you can call or that type of thing, those are things that we can certainly vet. But I'm putting forward, again, at 60,000 feet, there were people who competed for and did not get this contract.
Sure.
And I think, not knowing all, that may be an element or aspect of all of this.
Thank you, and thank you for playing ball. I mean, I just want to make sure those at home, and of course, the industry knows, like, hey, I mean, I know I've gotten multiple emails on this, and I want to bring their
Absolutely.
concerns forward. The
This
other,
was always a very contentious
Yeah.
contract. And I was joking with Matt Friedman. I said, can I just make it for 20 years? So we don't have to go through this. But, we do the right thing. So we do it every 5 years. Yeah.
when I ran, admittedly 4 years ago, towing was not at the top of the list. Question then. So for towing,
Mhm.
and those watching at home, when something pops up, do we have a standard that says if you want to come and do city incident or you've been in a wreck, whatever it may be, do we have a standard then businesses who can put themselves on that roster? So that way they are involved in this conversation. And then of course, if it meets certain requirements, by joining this list that it's going to be Beeline. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm sorry.
I guess what I'm trying to offer is like, is there a standard that we could implement? If you want to tow in the city of Lynchburg, here's our standard. It's very welcoming. You can be a part of it. Great, mom and pop, all the way up to Beeline and back, everywhere in between. But when it is certain circumstances, it's going to be Beeline, and here's why. Could we standardize that and then also hand that out to the businesses so that they know they're not getting shorthanded when it is a police initiated? Thinking outside the box.
Yeah, that would just be something that we would need to work with the police department about, because I'm not sure, that's not a practice that we currently have.
Okay.
So that would be like a new program, and I'm not sure, at this moment, if that's something, because I haven't spoken with them about that. I just know they were hesitant about a rotation in general.
Understood. And I don't know if that would qualify as a rotation or not, but needless to say, I wanted to offer any solution I could to ensure that we're being as transparent with all the different players here.
Sure.
And I appreciate your answers and my colleagues for indulging me.
Do you have another question?
Councilman Taylor.
Oh, sorry.
Councilman Taylor.
Go ahead,
was
Mike.
next. Oh,
Well, I received a call from a towing company, and they wanted to know why they were left out of the rotation. They have the equipment.
Well, I will say that the Towing Advisory Board did a very thorough analysis, and, if that would be all right, I'd be happy to send that to you. It was, observations for each one, kind of gave the justification for why we were doing what we were doing. And, so that you could see, I don't want to really, speak to that, to each one, in this public forum, because I don't want to do that, but, because I would never want to say something negative about any of our, businesses.
If can I help Ms. Suter a little bit with a couple questions? Ms. Suter, so can you just talk to us a little bit about the process? Was there a procurement notice that was sent and that was open for a certain amount of period of time?
Yes, it was open for a month, so we posted it online. We sent it to the people that we knew were interested locally, and then we also, put a state, we post it for the state, but, there's a local component to that, so we're just doing what we do with the
But
normal
it's fair to
process.
say, would you say that there was access, and what I think I heard you say there, that there was people that you knew that were in the business that you targeted specifically and sent this information?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
yes. And I knew that there were people who were interested, so I made sure that they knew that it was out there.
And they had
I
a month,
emailed it to them directly.
and they had a month to respond to it?
They did.
Okay. And, go ahead.
Just one thing too, I think we can add to that process, is the fact that that's the towing advisory committee's recommendation to council.
Right.
And so when this comes up, council is the one who's going to vote on accepting that their recommendation or not, just like we would on the planning commission.
Right.
Or they recommend a rezoning and we say, no, that's terrible, or whatever. That's ultimately going to come to council October 8th. or
October 8th.
October 8th. So that's when then we decide on that.
Yeah.
Yes. Couple of quick questions, but the procurement piece, if it's been through procurement, can you override a procurement process? If it's been through an
No, right. So it was open for anyone to submit a proposal, and we only got the 3.
So once you've gone through the procurement process and you select the bidder based on your standards, your guidelines, could we override that?
No, we would really have to go back out and do it again.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if it's been through a process.
And there's no guarantee that anyone would actually submit another
So, to
proposal.
me, if you went through the board and your procurement process, you have certain guidelines in the procurement, you can't, I know we have to do certain procurement for USDA stuff, and we can't just say, we're gonna pick John Doe. After we went through a process, we have to show them a process that we applied for, to say, we're going by these standards, and this person that met the standard, and then the committee met that anyway. So that's what I thought. As for how many persons applied for the project?
Just 3.
Or 3? Okay. Now, the other question I had, just so I can understand it better, when it comes down to like towing vehicles, does the towing company, do they set the rate as far as how much it is and how much the storage fee is?
They do, yes.
So they set their own rate. Now, I never understood where that money goes. Does that go to the city, or does it go to them, the towing company? Or
Goes to the towing company.
So goes to the towing company. Does the city get any percentage of that at all?
No.
Okay, that's what I was just trying to figure out. Somebody called me one time about the car got towed and they had to pay like all this money, and by the next day it was like $300 more. I was like, oh my goodness. And that's what I just didn't understand that whole process. So now I see, okay, all right. Did this company Beeline, did they have it last year?
They did.
Okay.
They've had it for the last 2 times, so this would be their 3rd round of
Okay,
having it.
all right, great, thank you, appreciate it.
I just wanted to remind council real quick before I call on council missions that we do have 3 other things to get to, and it is 5:29. So just want to let everybody know that. Go ahead, Councilman Schutz.
Good question. When we write the specs for this, do we know how many companies are actually capable of meeting that?
I believe, the city knows the capabilities of the local people and who has the capability to tow the heavy stuff. I mean, really, that's what we're looking at. And there's really only two.
So we're looking at a situation where we're creating a process that only two companies can compete for. Which is why it makes me wonder if it's not. We got to tow your big stuff, and I know we need to have a company that can do it. And I'm all for that. We got to take care of fleet because you got to keep that stuff moving. Because if something goes down, if you don't get it moving and don't get it where it needs to be repaired, it can be a domino effect. But with the other stuff, I don't know if that's something like, I guess that's what I'm thinking is the reason we can't separate the two. And I guess the way that we could separate the two is if we rejected it and went back would be the only way that would happen, correct?
Right. And
Is that
then
right?
you all would advise the towing advisory board of their charge to how to change that and work with the police department and how you want to change that, the
Yeah,
structure of that contract.
Because if there's a significant amount out there that, business, so I get it. But I just kind of, it concerns me a little bit that we write a spec that only two companies in the area can meet. That's all.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, moving on to Region 2000 Services Authority Settlement Resolution. This item will appear before council for action later this evening. Mr. Greg Patrick.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Really excited to be with you today. I have two business item briefings back to back, and I think the manager mentioned it, the word legacy, and I do think both of these opportunities are potential legacy type projects and opportunities for this council, and really excited to run through both of those opportunities with you. First, the Region 2000 Services Authority potential settlement resolution and landfill expansion. City manager greets every new employee every other Wednesday at orientation. And one of the things that he will always say to them is, if you want to know how you're doing as city manager, just miss someone's trash pickup and get that phone call. Because there is not anything that frustrates a resident more than us missing their trash pickup. And trash, while not sexy, is one of the most important services that we provide as a city. And making sure that we have a place to take our trash that is affordable, that is cost effective, and that is easy to use for our refuse team is super important. And that's what we're here to talk to you about today. So an overview of the presentation, a history of the Region 2000 Services Authority. This is a four-member authority, locality authority that we are a member of for refuse collection and waste disposal. We'll go through the status of the existing landfill that we have in Campbell County outside of Rustburg, and the options for future municipal refuse disposal. We'll look at an overview of pending litigation between authority members, and then, of course, a framework for the settlement of that pending litigation and the possible expansion of the existing landfill, and then what our next steps are. So first, a history of the Region 2000 Services Authority. So the Region 2000 Services Authority was established in December of 2007, and it consisted initially of City of Lynchburg and City of Bedford, and the counties of Campbell, Nelson, and Appomattox. Initially, we had two landfill sites. First, the Concord Turnpike landfill, which the authority ended up operating from its inception until 2014. And then, of course, the Livestock Road landfill in Campbell County in Rustburg, which has been operating from 2012 until present. It's important to note that the landfills accept municipal and private hauler waste. In fact, 65% of the refuse that goes to these landfills are actually from private haulers and not from municipal waste. The members reached an agreement to allow, when Bedford was transitioning from a city to a town around that time, the town of Bedford to withdraw from the authority in 2013. And we've already done one lateral expansion of the Livestock Road landfill in 2015, which brought the landfill to its current size. So future options for municipal waste disposal. So right now, we're expecting our one remaining landfill to reach its capacity in 2028 or 2029. So what are our options going forward? Number one, expand the Livestock Road landfill, our current landfill. We have engineering plans that would expand that landfill for about 25 years. This would offer by far the lowest operational costs. And what that means is lowest tipping fee. Tipping fee is a term of art in the refuse collection world that essentially means the cost that you pay to dispose of 1 ton of waste at a landfill. And of course, the lowest hauling fees because it's right next door. The other option would be to build a transfer station and haul waste to another landfill. So what are the considerations there? Well, number one, if we built a transfer station in the city of Lynchburg, we always control our own destiny. So that is a positive. It'll cost $5 million or more to build a very basic transfer station, which is essentially a steel building with a concrete wall and a front loader. Our refuse trucks would come in, they dump waste, front loader would pick up that waste, put it in a transfer truck, and then drive it to a landfill facility. A transfer station would have significantly more, would be significantly more expensive operationally, primarily because we would have to haul this waste at this point significantly further away than where we're taking it now, either Amelia County or probably on the other side of Roanoke. And so it costs a lot to haul it. And then the tipping fee would be significantly more than we're paying now. We're paying about $30 a ton in tipping fee at the Region 2000 landfill. We would be probably 25 to 30% higher than that, if not more, likely more, if we were hauling someplace else. Oh, yeah, absolutely. If they're not in Lynchburg, it's not subject to the to the towing fee. So an overview of the pending litigation, and this is really kind of the most complex part of where we are. Right now, private haulers, when they take trash to the landfill, they pay $10 more per ton in the tipping fee than a member jurisdiction pays. That revenue, that $10 difference in tipping fee is called excess revenue. And the definition of that is laid out in the member use agreement. And the member use agreement actually speaks to excess revenue twice. First, in the definitions section, and you can see it there, it says that excess revenue will be distributed to Lynchburg and Campbell, respectively, based on the amount of facility airspace contributed, respectively, to the authority. So basically, Lynchburg and Campbell were getting what amounted to a host fee for having landfills in our jurisdictions. The member use agreement also speaks to this excess revenue in section 5.11. And it says, in the event that there is excess revenue at the end of the fiscal year, the authority board may, and you see may is underlined there, vote to distribute some or all of that excess revenue to Lynchburg and Campbell, respectively, and it goes on. So every year from the founding of the region until 2018, that excess revenue was distributed by a board vote at a rate of 75% to Campbell, 25% to Lynchburg. And this is based on how much airspace, which is the space that we can occupy with waste, each of those jurisdictions contributed to the landfill or to the region. In September 2019, Appomattox and Nelson counties voted not to distribute funds to Lynchburg and Campbell, citing the may language in the member use agreement. To say that this was surprising is an understatement, and it has created an untold amount of tension between the member jurisdictions and the boards of the counties and the Council of Lynchburg in why this has gone down the way it has gone down. Lynchburg and Campbell filed suit in December of 2020 to force the release of funds. This litigation is still unresolved. So if we look at where we are currently, the undistributed funds with interest, now this is as of a couple of weeks ago, Lynchburg would be owed about $1.448 million for the airspace capacity we contributed, and Campbell would be owed about $3.25 million for airspace capacity, and then another 2.8 related to that lateral expansion that happened in 2015. So a total of almost $6.1 million. So what we want to go through today is a framework to settle that lawsuit potentially, and then for a potential expansion of the landfill in Campbell County. So first and foremost, the framework is as follows. All of that excess revenue would be distributed in full with interest to the city of Lynchburg and to Campbell County. So we'd get that $1.45 million. Campbell would get that $6 million upon settlement. Nelson and Appomattox counties would agree to leave the authority. The authority would assume all of the post-closure liabilities for Nelson and Appomattox County. So one thing you got to know about a landfill is once it's full, our work's not done. There is a lot of work that has to go into capping the landfill, monitoring. There's a whole lot of environmental concerns there. Those costs are called post-closure expenses. So the authority would assume all of the post-closure liability that Nelson and Appomattox currently have, which as of right now is about $1.1 million. Nelson and Appomattox would continue to pay member tipping fees through the life of the expanded landfill. They would also not be required to take their trash to the region, but they would have that option. Either way is fine with us. The less trash they bring, the more capacity we have. The more trash they bring, the more revenue we generate, which helps keep tipping fees low. And then Nelson and Appomattox would be released from any liability for current and future bond payments. And all parties would agree, of course, to drop the lawsuit. So what would it look like going forward? Well, the newly constituted Region 2000 would consist of Campbell County and Lynchburg. Campbell County would agree to expand the Livestock Road landfill as outlined in the region's most recent engineering report. And of course, pursue natural gas expansion, which would help keep our tipping fees low. Campbell County would receive a host fee of $750,000 annually, which would be adjusted based on the rate of inflation and the total volume of trash. And then the authority would offer a very small amount of targeted buyouts to folks that have either been consistently impacted through odor complaints in the past, or whose quality of life through odor, other natural impacts may be egregiously impacted by the expansion. And that would all be solely determined by the region. So this is the framework of the settlement that would see us move the region to a 2-member regional authority, and that would see us pave the way, hopefully, for an expansion of the landfill, which most importantly gets us security around where we're going to be able to take our trash for the next 25 years. And again, we can't overstate the importance there. So next steps, Campbell County adopted a very similar resolution to the one that we will ask you to vote on in support of the settlement framework at its meeting 2 weeks ago. It did leave the door open to other options at that point in time, primarily because the rest of the regional authority members had not taken a vote at this point to support the framework. Nelson and Appomattox counties have been generally supportive, but there has been no public vote from their boards at this point. Both of those counties do plan to take to their boards after a legal review shortly. The resolution that we would ask you to vote on tonight, and I know typically we wouldn't ask you to hear about an issue in the same night that you'd vote on it, but we do want to get on record with support of the framework, if council is supportive, so that we can move this forward as quickly as possible. Because even now, even though we have 4 or 5 years before that landfill is full, the permitting process to get new cells online takes a long time. And we are definitely operating against the clock. But we'll ask council to vote on a resolution that supports the framework and authorizes the city manager and the city attorney to take the steps necessary to carry out the substance of the settlement framework. And then from there, city staff will continue to update city council on where we are as we move forward towards that long-term solution, which is what we hope to get to as quickly as possible.
Did you have anything else?
Nope, that's it.
You go back one side. Okay. So why would Nelson and Appomattox not have taken a vote yet?
I think they we're all trying to move this pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think they,
I'm just trying to, is there anything baked in here that, from a timeline standpoint, that they would not do it until we do it, or we did a little bit of chicken?
I do think there was, Campbell County is the linchpin here, in that they hold a lot of the cards with respect to landfill expansion, because it's in Campbell County. We own land on which we can expand, but it requires a rezoning and a special use permit. Campbell signaling at their last meeting that they would be favorable towards this framework, I think kind of loosens the gears for the other jurisdictions to move forward. Why wouldn't they be supportive of this framework? Quite frankly, I couldn't tell you. It's a very good deal for the two counties. They'll get all the benefits of being a member without any of the liability. It's an interesting question if it came down to that. I do think ultimately what we're gonna get here is this is a deal that is good for all parties involved, right? From a financial standpoint, it's a huge benefit to Campbell. They're going to get $6 million in cash up front. They're going to avoid having to pay and operate a transfer station. They're going to get $20+ million worth of host fees over the next 25 years. For Lynchburg, we get $1.5 million in cash. We get some security around where we're going to be able to take our waste. And for Nelson and Appomattox, it's pretty obvious. They get all the benefits of being a member without any of the liability. So while the deal is good for each of the localities for different reasons, it's good for every locality. So I'm hopeful that they'll take a vote quickly and we'll be able to move forward.
If this was not to pass, what happens?
We'd have to build a transfer station quickly, and we would have to think about how we're going to dispose of our waste the most effectively in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's going to be substantially more expensive.
Could we go back to that slide that outlined those two options? I believe it was that one, maybe?
Right here.
Okay, so build transportation, and then it says will cost $5 million or more, which is already budgeted.
Yes.
So if we don't do a transfer station, as would Pat essentially adopting this resolution would provide, does that mean we now have $5 million in capital spending wiggle room?
There would potentially be some capacity. I think we would recommend that we still invested that capacity in the refuse operation. The facility out there is in dire straits of some improvement. There's still a question as to would we want to build a transfer station either way? because it does give us some additional flexibility. So I think if we get to a deal and we get to expansion, we would come back to council with a recommendation.
Well, okay, so I was with you until you said that, because I don't follow that logic, and I mean that with all respect.
Sure.
I'm trying to keep this as efficient and cost effective. I won't say cheap, but cost effective as possible. If we were to turn around and build this transfer station, we're going to have more fees, more things associated that was outlined, transporting all this. I mean, if we were to build this, would this transfer station then send it up to Livestock Road?
Potentially. And there's actually potentially some efficiencies there in that right now, our refuse trucks, they'll drive your neighborhood, they'll pick up your trash, and then they'll drive out to Campbell County and dump, right? So if we are able to drive through your neighborhood, pick up your trash, take it to a transfer station in Lynchburg, dump it, and then haul it all at once out to the landfill, there are potentially some efficiencies that we could pick up there. I think bottom line, if council wanted to use this $5 million for another purpose after we expanded the landfill,
Oh, yeah.
that's certainly
Small little school comes to mind, but that's just me.
but I would what I would recommend is that let us bring you a recommendation so you can understand this issue from all sides and make a decision from there.
So thank you. And at least ahead of the next meeting, what I would request is like, okay, so if you were to implement some type of transfer station, what would the financial impacts be, generally speaking? Because if we're going to start incorporating that into continued capital budgets, we all should be aware of what that would implicate for the taxpayer. And as I indicated initially, I am a little hesitant on that, at least that specific direction. But there's ways to get us taken care of over the next 25 years, and that's substantial. So I do commend you guys for taking that on. I know this has been a headache, so good job. And I'll look for what that might look like in the next meeting.
Thank you, and we'll knock on wood.
Is there any downside?
I'd have to search deep
Good answer.
for any downside.
Yeah, I think that
I think
we
it's
need
a
to
real
get this
benefit
done.
for everyone.
But I just wanted to hear you tell everybody that there's no downside to this.
Yeah.
Thanks for the work you put into it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
The downside would be the fact that we're giving up some to Nelson and Appomattox, that they should have just being part of the authority, that they should have done, that being part of the authority and part of the regional cooperation agreement. So we're greasing the skids and giving them some things, which is good, but, and then hopefully they will take this,
Yes.
like you said, because it is win-win-win-win. So
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 2 more business item briefings, roll call, and a closed session, or just one more?
And if you, Madam Mayor, you remember that Dr. Jennings had given a
Right.
brief this last time. This was a joint meeting, and if there were questions or what have you, it's up to the council's temperament whether or not you'd like to engage. If not, that's one that you can take off the list there.
We can take that one off until I think we talked about that until
The joint meeting.
joint meeting. So
Yes.
one more, roll call and closed session, and I'd like everybody to have dinner this week. So that doesn't mean you have to rush, but do your best to do your thing quickly. How about that?
Yes, ma'am. Again, another legacy-like item tonight. Lynchburg's pastime baseball in the Hill City, the next chapter. We have a proposed ownership change for the Lynchburg Hillcats. And that's what we want to go over with you guys today, because council has a role in this. City Stadium, Bagley James Stadium, is a city-owned facility. We have a lease or franchise with the existing ownership group that says if there is a change in ownership, in order to assign that franchise to the new ownership group, city has to approve it in writing. So we're coming to you, and next meeting, we will ask you to approve that ownership change, approve the assignment of that lease. So the Lynchburg Baseball Corporation, who is the current owner of the Lynchburg Hillcats, has entered into an agreement to sell the team to Hillcats Baseball LLC, and we'll give you a little bit more information on that group in just a moment. Based on a written request from Hillcats Baseball LLC, the city manager, upon having reviewed this, recommends that City Council assign the current baseball stadium franchise agreement, which is the lease of City Stadium, to this new ownership group. We're going to give you today a short history of baseball in Lynchburg, an overview of the council action that's required to approve the new ownership, and then what the next steps will be. But prior to jumping in, I want to give you a little bit of background on the new ownership group. The principal of Hillcats Baseball LLC is a gentleman named Dylan Narang. Dylan is an experienced minor league baseball owner, most recently as the largest minority owner in the Albuquerque Isotopes AAA baseball team in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Dylan grew up in Fairfax, Virginia, and is a UVA grad. After UVA, Dylan enlisted in the Army in the Counterintelligence Corps. He earned an MBA at Georgetown, and in 2005 was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army Reserve. Since 2005, Dylan's been a reservist, where he is currently a major and a company commander. Since 2011, Dylan has been the principal owner of Foggy Bottom Pictures, where he has written, directed, and produced feature films. Most recently, a film called Tapawingo, which stars John Heder. Many of you know him as Napoleon Dynamite. Gina Gershon, Billy Zane, who was the evil fiance of Rose in Titanic, and John Ratzenberger of Cheers fame. Incidentally, this film will screen at the Richmond Film Festival this weekend. When we met with Dylan a couple of months ago, what we're really interested in is why the Lynchburg Hillcats. Well, it's interesting. He has strong ties to the community. His daughter grew up in Amherst. His wife's family still lives in Amherst. He's a UVA grad. His daughter's a UVA grad. His wife went to Virginia Tech. So they are there's agency in the area for them. And we really look forward to working with him going forward. Next, interestingly enough, a few months ago, the museum put on an exhibit called Lynchburg's Pastime, Baseball in the Hill City. And again, you have to thank Ted Delaney at the museum for some of the pictures that are coming up. Lynchburg has a rich history with baseball. We've had club teams playing in Lynchburg since the 1860s. Popular names were hill climbers, the tobacconists, the shoemakers, and the cutters, which referred to those men who worked in leather factories cutting shoe leather. The first professional team began in Lynchburg in 1886 and were very imaginatively named the Lynchburgs. There has been a continuous minor league baseball team in Lynchburg since 1962, when the Savannah, Georgia White Sox moved to the Hill City, a move that was initiated by the godfather of Lynchburg baseball, Calvin Falwell, who was responsible for bringing them here. Since 1962, we have had minor league baseball here every year, with affiliations from several different Major League Baseball teams, including the White Sox, the Twins, the Rangers, the Mets, the Red Sox, the Pirates, the Rangers, the Braves, and currently the Cleveland Indians or Cleveland Guardians. The current team has been called the Hillcats since 1995, and 2025 will be the 30th year as the Hillcats. We've had some famous baseball players here, including Doc Gooden, Lenny Dykstra, Darryl Strawberry, among others. Lynchburg City Stadium is one of the oldest continually used minor league baseball parks in the entire country. It was built in between 1938 and 1940. And the last fact, in 1940, the first game played at Lynchburg City Stadium was between the New York Yankees and the Brooklyn Dodgers in front of a crowd of 7,000 people. So really rich history with baseball in Lynchburg. So just some pictures we'll run through real quick. Here's the Tobacconists from 1895, the Grays from 1930. You have the Cardinals from 1955, the Senators in 1959, White Sox in 68, the Red Sox in 1993, and then, of course, the original Hillcats logo on the left and the current Hillcats logo on the right. So required council action. Again, this is language from the contract. This franchise is personal to the team, and the team shall not at any time assign, sell, or transfer this franchise during the term of the agreement without the city's written approval. So that's what we're asking council for today. The request for assignment of the franchise must include the information below, which we are working with the Dylan Orang to put together, most of which we have. So at our next meeting, upon the recommendation of the city manager, we're going to ask city council to transfer the franchise to the new ownership group. And then from there, the city staff will continue to negotiate with the new ownership team for a new franchise agreement, which will take us into the next 10 years of baseball in Lynchburg. And that is all I have for you.
Questions or comments? Councilman Missions?
Thank you. This is, I mean, it's an exciting move. And you mentioned Lenny Dykstra. Only World Series game that I've ever actually went to. I got to watch him play. It was pretty cool.
Very exciting. Thank you. Really cool history on the city too. So thank you for your hard work on this. This is awesome. Anybody else? No? Okay, roll call. Councilman Helgeson?
I've been watching in the news lately, and like Ford Motor Company and other major corporations have gotten rid of and out of the business of discrimination with regarding DEI initiatives. Several months ago, we had a proposal with regarding merit, excellence, and opportunity that was brought forward, and then all of a sudden the meeting was adjourned. That's never been brought back forward. I think that would be prudent for us to bring that back up, especially when you look at all these other companies that have recognized that costs production and performance and I heard when we had just a brief discussion of it before we headed to be voted upon, city staff said, hey, we're not discriminating. Great. So that makes it easy. Then we can actually easily adopt and affirm this policy, I think, fairly quickly, because if that's what you're already doing, well, we're affirming that policy. So hopefully we can bring that up at the next meeting or two, because that was put on the agenda, and it was just the meeting was adjourned due to time constraints or whatever reason. So hopefully that'll come back up, especially when we see the action that's happened by major corporations. So thank you.
Dr. Wilder?
Yes, just real quick. Diamond Hill had an amazing community day on Saturday. Thanks to the Parks and Rec and all those partners that partnered with that event. And Daniels Hill had a Daniels Hill reunion on Saturday. Over 200 people came from all over the country, like even Texas, came to all the persons that were raised up in Daniels Hill, which was an amazing celebration. And they had a Latino cultural celebration at the Academy on Saturday night. I had a lot of Hispanic food that night, so it was a wonderful event. So I'm glad that we can partner our community for some culture diversity. And on this Saturday at 2:00, it's going to be the Diamond Hill Historic Community's 50th anniversary. I'm on this Saturday at 2, and there's a party on Pierce Street at 2:00 also. Doing a Pierce Renaissance portion. They're doing a lot of events at Pierce Street, so I encourage persons to go to some of these great events in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Missions?
Things real quick. Number one, there's a pretty dangerous incident that happened across the river since our last meeting with law enforcement, and I know that our police department was involved, and I've heard some great things from some folks about some of our officers that stepped up and led the way when they actually had somebody that was shooting at officers. So I just want to commend them and commend their bravery and thank them for stepping in to do that, and supporting our neighboring communities. I thank them for that. Second, next year we've got reassessments coming. I'm hearing that there's potential 20% increases again in assessment values as what I'm hearing. So we'll see what that pans out to be if that's the case. We need to start thinking now about what that's going to look like for our real estate tax rate. Over the summer, the Commission on Local Government dropped their fiscal stress ranking. Lynchburg remains high, and it's not a city-county thing. There's 24 cities that have a lower fiscal stress rank than the city of Lynchburg. And what that means is that, we don't have the ability to extract much more revenue out of our citizens and our businesses, and we're already working hard to get as much as we can out of them, and that the median household incomes in Lynchburg are down comparatively to the other localities. So I hope that we can do the right thing and at minimum equalize our real estate tax rate next year and not have any tax hikes. That's all I have.
Councilman Taylor?
No.
Vice Mayor Faraldi? Okay, a couple things. One is I got to go to spend the day with some of our 7th graders over at Lincoln Middle School last week, and they were awesome. Mrs. Komanaki's class and Mr. Komanaki's class, and they were wonderful. And so shout out to y'all. You were all wonderful. And I didn't think I would have so much fun with 7th graders. And I did, and y'all made me feel really special. So, and super smart. All of y'all were super smart and fun. Also, shout out to the Lynchburg United Youth Football teams. Y'all, they had their launch 2 Saturdays ago, and that's just awesome to see youth football back in the city with our own kids playing. And then also, it is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. So just remember that ovarian cancer is often referred to as the silent killer because its symptoms can be subtle and easily mistaken for other less severe conditions. So it affects thousands of women around the world each year. And during this month, let's remember and honor those women who have battled ovarian cancer and make sure that you do get your screenings so that you can not fall victim to this very deadly and silent killer. And also, we were going to highlight the Sheriff's Department, this Lynchburg Sheriff's Department. Its primary duties are courthouse and courtroom security, the service of the court-generated civil process. They process papers and the transportation of prisoners and mental commissions by the court order. The current strength of the Lynchburg Sheriff's Office is 21 full-time and 15 part-time sworn positions, as well as 3 civilian positions. And they are currently accepting applications for 4 open positions. Also, the Day at the Point's coming up. Day at the Point is almost here. Don't miss the 24th annual Day at the Point Fall Festival at Point of Honor on Saturday, October 5th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The historic grounds of Point of Honor on Cabell Street will come to life with living history, live music, food trucks, historic vendors, free house tours, cider making, carriage rides, pumpkin decorating, and other family-friendly activities. Experience community history and fun in a beautiful setting. This event is always free and open to the public. Free parking on Cabell, Norwood, and A Streets. For more information, visit pointofhonor.org. Yeah, I'm super excited about that. Now, council, I will ask you, so we do have a closed session tonight. Would you like to go ahead and go into it now, or would you like to move it to the end of our regular meeting? End? Are you guys okay going into the end so you can have a break?
Do it now.
Everything cool with that? Consensus? Are you good with it? Okay, so we'll go ahead and just move close to the end of our regular meeting so y'all can have a break and have some dinner, okay? Thanks so much. We will adjourn and come back at our 7 o'clock meeting. Thank you.